He lost over 100 pounds, survived 2 heart attacks, walked away from national television, and spent his final years behind the counter of a small antique store on the edge of the Arizona desert, greeting strangers, boating on the lake, and playing guitar at the end of the day. That man was Darrell Sheets, the gambler from Storage Wars, and if the only version of his story you know is the one from the auction floor, then you don't know the half of it. By the end of this, you'll understand why the life he built in Lake Havasu City matters far more than anything he ever pulled out of a storage locker. Darrell Sheets was born May 13, 1958, in Covina, California. He didn't grow up wealthy. He didn't come from the entertainment industry. He came from the kind of background where you figure out how to make money with your hands and your instincts. And that's exactly what he did. He entered the storage auction business in the early 1980s. That's nearly 3 decades before Storage Wars premiered, before the cameras arrived, before anyone in America knew his name. He built his entire knowledge base the old way, buying locker after locker, reading rooms, learning to spot the difference between junk and something worth chasing. By the time A&E launched Storage Wars on December 1, 2010, Darrell Sheets wasn't a television character being built from scratch. He was a 30-year veteran of a trade most people had never heard of. And here's what made him different from day one. He didn't go after volume. His strategy was always the big hit. Find one item that changes everything and walk away. High risk, no guarantees, no safety net. That's how the gambler earned his name. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. The Storage Wars audience grew fast. By season 3, millions of viewers were watching every week. But one moment separated Darrell Sheets from every other buyer on that show, and it still holds the record today. He and his son Brandon paid $3,600 for a storage locker. No guarantees. 5 minutes to look through the door and make a call. Darrell made the call. Inside was a collection of original artwork by California painter Frank Gutierrez. The full appraisal came in at over $300,000. One locker, one decision, a return of nearly 100 times the investment. It remains the largest single find in Storage Wars history. He also pulled 4 original Picasso drawings out of a unit over the years. Found an Abraham Lincoln letter that sold for more than $15,000. Over 163 episodes, Darrell Sheets built a body of work that nobody on that show could match for sheer scale of discovery. But his son Brandon was part of almost all of it. The two appeared together on screen for years, Darrell as the lead, Brandon as the student. That relationship, father teaching son the trade he'd spent his whole life learning, was never just television. It was the real thing. Most people who know this story stop here. But the real story starts right now. Behind the performance there was a man carrying more than the cameras ever showed. At his heaviest, Darrell Sheets weighed over 300 pounds. He admitted later that he'd caught himself lying in bed, beer in one hand, snacks in the other, and realized something had to change. After his divorce from Kimber Werfel in 2016, he committed to a complete overhaul. He partnered with Nutrisystem and put in the work. Over 100 pounds gone. He looked like a different person. He felt like a different person. Then 2019 arrived. He'd been sick for 3 months before it happened, quietly, without telling anyone. Then, while attending a Justin Timberlake concert, he had a heart attack. He was hospitalized, diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and told he had a severe issue developing in his lung. He underwent surgery. He posted about it himself. He didn't hide it. He wrote publicly that he was feeling better every day, but that the life changes were emotional. He urged his followers to take care of their bodies. A man who had spent 40 years chasing the next big score was now learning how to be still. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. My end, in Bigumpoon, Darrell Sheets made a decision that many people in his position never make. He didn't chase a comeback. He didn't chase relevance. He moved to Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and built something small and real. He opened an antique and salvage store called Havasu Show Me Your Junk, located at 1545 Industrial Boulevard. Reviews from people who visited described the same thing every time. Darrell was usually there. He'd talk to you, show you around. The energy of the place was his energy, eclectic, hands-on, unpredictable in the best way. In between, he was on the water. Lake Havasu City sits on the Colorado River border, and Darrell had a boat. He played drums. He played guitar. He spent real time with his granddaughter Zoe, who he'd spoken about publicly for years as one of the most important people in his world. His co-star Renee Najoda, who competed against Darrell on screen for years, said after his death that despite what viewers thought, the two were friends. He described Darrell as someone who cared more about his family than anyone he'd ever met. That was the Arizona chapter. Quiet, genuine, built by hand. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. As far back as November 2025, Darrell Sheets had been posting publicly about what he described as an identity theft and cyberbullying campaign targeting him and small businesses in Lake Havasu City. He posted on community Facebook pages, naming specific individuals he believed were impersonating him online, posting under his name and phone number to damage his reputation and the reputations of local restaurants and businesses. He asked his community for help. He warned people. He was not quiet about it. He stated publicly that if anything happened to him, he wanted people to know who was responsible. On April 24, 2026, at approximately 2 a.m., officers with the Lake Havasu City Police Department were called to a residence on Chandler Drive. Darrell Sheets was found deceased. He was 67. The Mohave County Medical Examiner's Office later confirmed the cause of death as suicide. The Lake Havasu City Police Department is now actively investigating allegations of cyberbullying connected to his case. His phone has been submitted for forensic analysis. Renee Najota publicly urged law enforcement to pursue the harassment angle. Police confirmed they are aware of those allegations and that the investigation remains open. Darrell Sheets was a man who started with nothing except a sharp eye and a tolerance for risk. He spent 30 years in a business nobody glamorized. Then a camera found him, and millions of people watched him do what he'd always done, only now with an audience. He survived a physical collapse that would have ended most men. He rebuilt himself. He chose a quiet town and a small store and a life that looked nothing like television, and that was the point. His son Brandon has spoken publicly about plans for the store. The community in Lake Havasu knew him not as a reality TV star, but as the guy behind the counter. A&E released a statement calling him a beloved member of their Storage Wars family. Nezahada called him a legend. The comments from fans across social media called him something simpler: real. Do you think the people who watched Darrell Sheets every week on Storage Wars ever understood what he was actually carrying? And does it change how you see the show now?